with Andor, I'm comparing it the way I'm comparing it to any TV show. There's 2 points of view you can have on these things, and I talked about this with Obi-Wan a little bit. You can rate it as a Star Wars fan, and then you rate it as an actual TV show objectively. How does it sit in terms of all the best TV? Because right now, we're in the golden age of television. It might be on the down a little bit, but the last 10 years is some of the best television we've ever watched. I like it more than movies. Movies have sucked. Television's been there. And with these TV shows that we have, Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones, True Detective, I mean, you could go on and on and on. There's a million really, really good shows that have come out that people want to talk about. Succession, Yellowstone, whatever.
Sure.
And that's what you have to compare these against, because the competition is high. So when we're watching a show like this, you can have your Star Wars opinion of it, which is obviously going to be one thing because we're inclined to like the show just because it's Star Wars. And then you have to compare it to all these other TV shows that are expertly done. Like the stories that are being told in some of these shows is amazing. Even like The Boys. I just finished watching that.
Yeah.
Really, really good show. Okay, it's corny in some spots, but like really well written, super exciting and engaging, and you're on your toes, and like it's just a really interesting, weird concept. So I'm comparing Andor to all these, and in terms of comparing it to these other shows, that's like my only criticism for it, is like it doesn't stand on its own the way these other shows do. Now, as a Star Wars show, I find it really interesting. As its own Star Wars thing, I think they're doing something really unique and fresh and needed for the Star Wars universe. The production value is insanely good. The best we've seen for any Star Wars show so far. Not even close. The cinematography, incredible. Okay? The acting's really, really good. I just, like, with the writing of it compared to all these other good shows, I just don't see it in the same top tier as that. If we're comparing it to all these other TV shows in the last 5-10 years, it's just not really there. And you know, someone brought this up in one of my reaction video comments, was like, maybe part of it is because you're doing reactions while you're watching it. And I'm like, yeah, maybe, because that is a distraction, like having to do a reaction while you're watching a show. And that might be part of it. But I also think part of it, like I've been trying to put my finger on what the show is missing, and I can't put my finger on it. I don't know what it's missing 100%. Like, I don't know how I would say, like, what would take it from here to here. I think maybe it's just like the content, like in the writing, it's just not as compelling as it could be. Again, not to say I hate it. I'm enjoying it. I've really liked these last couple episodes. It's just like if I compare them to all these other TV shows, I don't have the same feeling about this show as I have with some of my other favorite TV shows, if that makes sense.
Other TV shows as in like general or Star Wars
other
TV shows?
No, just other TV shows.
Other TV shows, yeah. No, I understand that. I definitely think that there's an element that's missing that makes it feel special, because I think Star Wars has always had an element of specialness. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but there is that element of like fantastical and an amazing, like The Mandalorian, I think captures the spirit of Star Wars very, very well. The Book of Boba Fett, for all of its faults, still captured the spirit of Star Wars pretty well, especially with like the Luke Skywalker episodes, which feel like, to me, a continuation of the original trilogy. For the 2 episodes that Luke was in, or 1 episode that Luke was in, I felt like I had just gotten done watching Return of the Jedi, and then I was like, oh, it's a follow-up to Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
I think Andor is more like, here are the everyday things happening to these people, as opposed to it being in the scope of a larger story. I mean, even Rogue One felt like it was a piece of the puzzle to the overall Star Wars story, because it had all those elements of like, oh, the rebels are fighting back against the Empire, and they're going to go steal the Death Star plans, and they got to find Galen Erso, who's Jyn Erso's father, and you still have the scenes of them at the base, and then they go fly up into space, and you have red leader to gold leader, gold leader to blue, or whatever. So it still has like that overarching story, but all the Star Wars-y elements are in there, and you still get that spirit of hope and excitement and fantasy, and I just don't feel like Andor has any of those elements. Like, it's so grounded in reality, which is not to say that that's like necessarily a bad thing, but I do think it's hurting the show in terms of its overall Star Wars-y vibe. It is so grounded in reality. I mean, like, the characters cuss. They had like a sex scene they had, which is new to Star Wars. Like, everyone's joking like, oh, this is the first time we've seen sex in Star Wars. And I'm like, okay. But like, that does tonally change the way you perceive the show. They have little things that the characters will do, like the medical stuff in this most recent episode, where they're like taking all like the medical things and they're like putting like the mask on. Like that took me out of Star Wars. And it's a little thing like that, but it's so modern that it kind of tricks your brain into going, wait a minute, am I watching something that's supposed to be reflective of things that we use in our everyday life, or am I supposed to be watching something that's like taking me out into a different part of the world, a different story, a different galaxy? And I almost think that Andor is too rooted in seriousness and modern day to really give you that immersiveness in like, this is a different story in a galaxy far, far away, if that makes sense. And I think that for me, that's where the disconnect is coming from.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. I think that's kind of on purpose. Like, I've read some of the interviews with the showrunners, and they're not as they don't hold Star Wars in such high regard as some of these other people, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing. But there are elements of this that do kind of take you out of it. I think that medical like mask is like a pretty good example of that. It's just, and I think they're missing the mark on in a couple key areas, or at least just not developing them as much as they could. Like Luthen to me is probably the most interesting character in the show, and we've seen him like 3 times in the last couple episodes. Actually, Andy Serkis's character I really like.
Yes.
Although let's dispel the rumors now. That's not Snoke. I saw some rumor going around on Twitter or Reddit or something. That's like,
no,
Matt.
Snoke. Everything's connected. Jyn Erso is Rey's mother. Finn is related to Mace Windu. It's this whole ordeal. Everyone's connected.
Not everything's related. I know it's the same voice actor, okay, but it's pretty clear that Snoke was made in a lab, okay? Andy Serkis is not Snoke. It's just the same actor.
Andy Serkis is Gollum.
Yeah, he's a really good character, and his acting's been amazing. Super interesting character. I'm glad we're getting to see some of that, but not enough Luthen. You know, like let's show some more of that. Syril is a unbelievably disinteresting character to me. I don't care about him. He's getting creepier and creepier, and we're seeing the same scenes with him over and over again. We've seen him eating cereal now, maybe 5 times. And like people are like, oh, well, it's supposed to be boring. You're supposed to feel that like no. This is just bad. It's just not. It's not good storytelling. I'm sorry, and I think that's the biggest problem that I have with this versus, let's say, a Tales of the Jedi. The Tales of the Jedi is still better storytelling overall. It's so efficient with the way it used its time and the tone of it and the Star Warsiness of it and the way it interconnects. Now, obviously, you're using more Star Warsy type characters, okay? But
well, no, you're using the main characters of Star Wars.
And, like, I mean, even compared to Mandalorian, that didn't have. He's just a brand new character. Okay, it was Filoni and Favreau with really, really good storytelling, really compelling storytelling. And I think the storytelling aspect of this, and this is really highlighted by the ends of the episodes, is just it's not fully there for me. If I'm looking at this not as a Star Wars fan and I'm watching it, what's keeping me? What's getting me to stay? Now, you could make that argument for a lot of different TV shows. Like if you look at Breaking Bad, for example, the first season's pretty boring. Even the second season in some areas.
I've never watched Breaking Bad. I know of it and I know the general plot line, but like I've never watched it.
Yeah, it's really good. And so I don't want to like come down on Andor too hard because I understand it's the first show in the season, but again, this is Star Wars. The stories are already kind of built in. With Breaking Bad, we didn't have anything. You're introducing a totally new character and a totally new storyline with all these other things it's the first season of a brand new thing. Star Wars isn't new. Andor is not a new character. He's been around. Mon Mothma's not a new character. The Emperor is not a new character. The Empire is like, we know what these things are. I just don't know that they're being reflected properly in this show in a very Star Warsy way, and someone with an objective point of view who hasn't watched Star Wars before, I don't think you're getting those people to come in and go, yes, this is a great show. And that's one of my biggest problems. Like I've had multiple people ask me, do you recommend the show? And I'm like, I don't know. First, I got to finish watching it first, but I'm not going to tell you you have to go watch it because it's just, I don't feel like you have to go watch it. Now, am I enjoying it? Yes, I'm definitely enjoying it. I felt myself really looking forward to the episode this week, and there's some really good nuggets here and there, but in terms of like an overall hook to grab your average person in off the street, which is what I was hoping this show would be, I don't think that it's there in that regard.
Right. And to play off what you're saying in terms of people tuning in every single week is, I hate when people use the term, all you want to see is fan service. You just want fan service and Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker. And I'm like, yes, Of course, I want to see the main characters of Star Wars. George Lucas made the main characters of Star Wars. Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Padme Amidala, Ahsoka Tano. But I think people enjoy that. They want that reason to tune in. I mean, why do you think The Mandalorian Season 2 did as well as it did? Everyone's like, who's the Jedi that Mando is going to give Grogu to? Like, that's a huge plot point for the character of Mando, but also of Grogu, because that's like his entire future. And naturally, everybody's like, there's nobody else more qualified than Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
So therefore, everybody had a reason to turn into the finale, because everyone wants to know, where's Grogu's fate going to end up? Is he going to be a Mandalorian? Is he going to be a Jedi? And they like having those connections to tune in every single week. Not to say that, like, having characters like Andor are not capable of that, but I just feel like I'm following them around as they're just going through random scenarios, as opposed to a bigger overarching plot.
Yeah.
You know, like the plot of The Mandalorian is, okay, the Jedi are dead. Here's this Force-sensitive child who is of a species that is incredibly rare. Is Mando just supposed to give him to the Empire and then move on with his life? Or is he supposed to take care of this child? He's formed a sort of bond with it. And where is that going to lead the character and the story for the future of Star Wars? Especially like when the Empire is pursuing them. I think that Andor is getting so bogged down in terms of like the everyday that we don't know what the overarching story is. Yeah. We're not really following a thread of Andor going, this is the mission, and here's the Y plot all the way over to the right, and right now I'm at X, and here's all the letters in between to get to the Y plot. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like, there doesn't seem to be an overarching...
Yeah, I mean, the other thing
like, story
is, like,
points.
I get what you're saying, like, but not everything, and this is going to be the criticism to what you just said, which I want to address, is like, not everything needs to be connected to the Skywalker saga, and I agree.
No.
This is why I like this. However, in order to do that, you need to have interesting characters. You need to build interesting characters, which is a tough thing to do in Star Wars, to be fair. But we did it with Mando, all right? Right now, Andor is not an interesting enough character, and I think this was the major flaw with the first 3 episodes. You didn't get into detail enough with him. You just assumed everyone knows who this guy is. And you didn't give us any motivation. I still don't know what his motives are. I still don't know what he believes in, what he doesn't believe in.
They dropped the plot with his sister.
Completely. Yeah, they bring that up in the first scene. They bring up his sister and then just drop it.
Yeah,
okay?
We haven't talked about her for the rest of this season or his past on that planet.
Or yeah, no, they haven't talked about that. The Kundalinis or whatever their names were. And it's the same thing with other characters too, like Dedra. I'm still wondering why is she so evil? Why does she like the Empire so much? Like, she's an interesting character, by the way. I like that actress. I think she gets better with every episode. That's one really positive
she's good.
thing.
She's a good actress.
All the acting in the show I think has been pretty good. I'm not a huge fan of what's her name?
Bix?
No.
Vel.
She's fine.
Vel's
she's also not like super interesting to me. Luthen's interesting. Let's develop him more. Like, I need to figure out the motivations. Like, why is there a rebellion? Why are people rebelling? Okay, I get it. The Empire is kind of like the Gestapo
fighting back. Like,
yeah, like I don't get. We don't have these character motivations. Also, I brought this up in my reaction video, but one of my problems is they bring up so many things, and I don't know what I'm supposed to know and what I'm not supposed to know. And I'm not the biggest Star Wars dork in the entire world. I don't know all these things, so you have to assume that people who are uninitiated to Star Wars, who haven't watched these things before, they also don't know. So they bring up all these planets. It's like Rectus 9, and then it's Blumpus Corrigan, and you're like, who's Blumpus Corrigan? And then you have to figure out, like...
Kringle.
Yeah, and they bring up all these characters, and you're like, oh, Blumpus, who's Blumpus? And you're like trying to think, and then you miss lines, and you're like, wait, what was that last thing they were talking about? So it's kind of confusing to follow these different
I think that's where Andor's getting bogged down, though, is... Andor, and I said this in my reaction video for episode 9, I don't think he's the main character of his own show. I think that Syril and Vel and Dedra are way more of main characters than Andor are. Like, they're so hyper-focused in on these characters, which I agree with you, not all their motivations are clear, but I think that's also really hurting the show, is they're not sticking to a particular character and then watching that character go through a specific arc. Like, within the first, 4 episodes of Mando season 1, you see the conflict of this guy who's a bounty hunter. He doesn't really care. He comes across this child, takes it back to the buyer, gives it to the buyer, leaves, and then has like this moment of, I cannot leave this kid. Turns around, goes back, gets him, and then you have motivation. He's like, well, I'm not going to leave this kid in the hands of the Empire because it's force sensitive and they will surely kill him. So he takes the kid and he's like, okay, now what am I supposed to do? And then boom, we have our story. We haven't gotten that with any of the main characters because there's like 80 of them. Like if there are 2 characters I want to see developed and developed in a very interesting way, it's Luthen and Andor. Yeah. If I was going to pick a third, I would say Dedra. Like I'm of the opinion right now that we don't need Syril.
Yeah,
you could
I mean,
literally blend the Syril and Dedra characters
What are we doing?
together.
Why are we wasting scenes on this guy? I don't understand it. He's so creepy and so weird. We know what I'm more interested in right now? I'm way more interested in like an Empire thing. Like all the scenes with the Empire, with Dedra and stuff, that's the most Star Wars-y feeling stuff to me, is when they're talking about these different systems, the order of how things work there. They're mentioning like the Emperor and the Senate, and I'm like, this is kind of cool. Like the inner workings of the Empire isn't really something we've seen before. Like, let's talk more about that. Like that's what's interesting.
Why aren't they paralleling a story with Andor and Luthen as 2 characters on one side of the story, right? And then the other 2 characters could be Mon Mothma and Dedra. And you have these two sides of characters who, because Mon Mothma is working for the Empire in quotation marks, but you could kind of parallel her character with like Dedra and then Luthen with Andor, and then you have these 4 characters whose stories kind of interconnect and cross, and that way you can like narrow it down to a more cohesive storyline, and you're not popping around from one scene to the next, like following behind 80,000 characters. It's just like, I don't understand why we have so many main characters, because you're losing, in my opinion, like what you're trying to achieve. Like what are we trying to do here?
Yeah, well, this is my biggest criticism of the show so far. The endings are terrible. They're terrible. This last one was actually pretty interesting. Like Andy Serkis. So let's actually talk about some of the specifics of these episodes.
So real quick, you guys, welcome to another Star Wars podcast. We just started going off. We didn't really do an introduction to the show. I don't know where I'm going to put this intro because we've already talked 17 minutes in without introducing it. But hello, this is another Star Wars podcast.
So
but go off, Matt.
Episodes 8 and 9, we get the character of Andy Serkis, who's introduced. Very good character. His acting has been awesome. I know some people were a little lukewarm about having him in here because of the Snoke, like you having the same actor playing 2 different characters in the same universe. Who cares? He's really good. We have this weird prison, which I think is also another interesting element. We get to see how the Imperials run the prison. Okay, it's kind of ruthless the way they do it. Okay, now we're starting to get more of the evilness of the Empire. We get Dedra torturing Bix a bit. Okay, great. Like, let's keep some of that stuff going. This last episode, episode 9, was really the first ending of the show where I've been like, okay, good. We're going somewhere. There's going to be something big that happens next episode, or at least there better be, because they faked us out in episode 4 before the heist or whatever.
It was like heist, fake out, filler episode.
So the reason why the endings are important to me is like, we need to know where the show's going. We need to have an idea of like what's happening. What's the end goal here? I know that there's like a rebellion. Why is there a rebellion? Why are these people specifically involved in the rebellion? It's such a secret. Why? What happens to people who have rebelled in the past or maybe shown signs of rebelling? Why is the Empire so evil? Why do people not like them? You know, like these are questions that we need to have answered. But let me talk about some positive things real quick. Okay. So episode 8 and 9, like I said, the prison camps, really cool element. Like they have the different floors. There's clearly tons of people. They're imprisoning them for no reason.
Yeah, they're processing them for even speaking out slightly against the Empire.
And they're making parts for the Empire. It's cheaper labor than droids. Okay, cool. Like this is all good stuff. Andy Serkis is a big standout to me. His acting in episode 9 in particular was really, really good because he's like, no, just do your time, we'll get out. Do your time, get out. And you can see the shift in the last like 10 minutes of episode 9.
Also his character's I love what he's done with his character because he's playing the part of guy who pretends not to care but actually cares a lot. And I really, really like that. Because when the Olaf, whatever his name was, when Olaf dies or whatever, like his character is really struck by that and you can tell. And I think that they did a great job of creating a complex yet very interesting character over 2 episodes. Which somehow they haven't managed to do with other characters, but they managed to do with Andy Serkis.
Yeah. No, you're making good points. Obviously, the set designs and stuff here are awesome. They really immerse you in wherever those places are. And we
Yeah,
can make
which is-
arguments
which
about
is-
whether that's really Star Warsy or not, but
The production quality of the sets, they
unbelievable.
do a great job of making you feel like you're there, which is
Yeah.
definitely something that they had over Kenobi. Like, these look like real locations.
Yeah. Yeah. They definitely look like they're real places. They put a lot of effort to that, and it totally pays off. I hope that this is indicative of where other Star Wars shows can go, because it's desperately needed in the Star Wars. In terms of the production quality, it's the first one that actually feels like it's super on par with all the other good TV stuff. It feels pretty cinematic in areas, which is amazing. The score is pretty cool. I think one thing that is kind of taking me out of it, though, is like the internal or the intro music and stuff. Like, they have this like synthesizer.
Dude, it's Stranger Things
type of thing.
Yeah. It's Stranger
I'm like,
Things.
why is this so spooky? But there's some really cool, like, tense moments, like undertones during certain scenes, which are really, I think they're really cool. Well done.
It's
But
little.
it's not all very cohesive, I think.
It sounds a lot like Blade Runner to me too.
Yeah, that's a good comparison.
I feel like the music sometimes clashes with whatever scene it is. Like, if it's like super tense, like, you'll get a moment of like a synthesizer playing in the background. Like, I don't know if this is actually fitting the tone of what's happening here. Not to say that it doesn't sound cool. It's just I don't know for what they're going for this particular show, which is really mature and dark, if that's the right sound.
Yeah, like the beginning of episode 9. It's like these crazy arpeggio synthesizers. It's like, okay, great. Sounds good to me. Episode 9, we get a really weird reference that no one has talked about, where Mon Mothma talks about marrying her husband at 16.
Oh my god.
What?
Yeah. No.
We're just gonna gloss over that?
No. It's 15, dude.
Oh yeah.
They got married at 15. She's like, oh, we were in the Senate together when we were 15. That was like shortly before we got married. And I was
in my reaction, I'm like, wait, what? We're just gonna skip over that? Wait, who wrote this?
That brings up a lot of questionable.
Yes.
I don't know.
I get it. They're trying to establish she got married young, but you could say 18, dude. That's so weird.
It's really weird, and I guess they're trying to play into like the different cultures in Star Wars. I don't know what her people are called. It starts with like a C or something. It's like Chandelirian.
Chandelian or something. Chandrillon.
I don't know. But he said that, and I was like, well, that puts a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. I don't like that. That's super uncomfortable. And they never, like, it's casually mentioned once, and it's like, nope. And you're like, okay, so I understand why this marriage is absolute trash.
Yeah. So yeah, she like hates her husband.
And she's totally into that other guy that she was a senator with.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I just want her to leave her husband and crappy daughter and go.
I know. Go to the hot hunky Chandrillon.
The silver fox guy.
Yeah.
She can go be with him.
So a couple other things. I wanted to make sure that we mention.
Vel and Mon Mothma being cousins.
Well, that's episode 9. There's an episode 8 thing I wanted to focus on, which is we finally have Syril's motivation. Okay, so this has been the slowest moving character of all time, but like we know that he's really interested in joining the Empire. We know that now. He gets interrogated by Dedra, and well, some people thought maybe he joined the rebellion or something, or maybe he was becoming disillusioned with the way it was run. But no, now he's like super gung-ho Empire.
He's got the hots for the Empire.
Yeah, he does. And he's like, we need law and order.
The way he talks about the Empire is pretty sexual, honestly. Like,
That's
the way
weird.
this dude talks about the Empire, he's like, I just need to get in there and maintain order because it's just so important to me. And you're like, tone it down, dude. I get it. You're super horny for the Empire.
Yeah, he is. And then, in the next episode, we can talk about how creepy he is in one of the creepiest, weirdest scenes in all of Star Wars. And it just kind of was so out of pocket. It just came out of left field. Like, okay, he's a total weirdo creep. He was kind of creepy before. Now it's like, okay, super weirdo creep, admitted to stalking Dedra. And you think that's going to get you? I wanted to thank you for this promotion.
I followed you here.
Yeah, you did this the wrong way.
Dedra, you've shown me there's so much beauty in the galaxy because of how hot Law and Order is.
Yeah.
Please let me make love to Law and Order.
Weird. And she's like, yo, dude, back off. And now I'm like, okay, is he just going to become a weird, creepy stalker now? Where is this character going?
Anyway. Well, I want to get
thing,
into this, but we're still on episode 8, right?
Well, we can do both at the same time. This is an episode 8, episode 9 breakdown. But so the other thing we find out is that Mon Mothma is terrible at being a senator. People don't even want to listen to her. They're just turning off their little flotation frisbees and walking off. I don't know if that was episode 8 or 9, but she's not. She doesn't have very good stage presence, is I think what I would say. People are bored with what she says.
Which, by the way, we've been shown this for like the last 3 episodes at least. Yeah. She's like trying to speak to the Senate, and then people are like either leaving or they're not paying attention. And she comes back, and then she does her little evil plan with hot hunky silver fox guy that she needs to run away with, and then they talk, and then she has a bad interaction with her crappy family. Like, I feel like they're replaying a lot of the same scenes in these last 3 episodes.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you feel that way? Because like we literally went through this in like episode 3, episode 5 and 6, now 8, and now 9, where it's like you are getting into the same you're getting into the same beats. So, like, with Syril, it's like he wakes up in the morning, he eats his breakfast, goes to his crappy job, comes back, and that's, like, the crux of his scene in this episode. And then Mon Mothma does her little meeting with Silver Fox sexy hair guy, and she goes, oh, we need to do this. And then she goes to the Senate, and then nobody listens. And then maybe she talks with Luthen and then has a bad interaction with her family, and then her scenes are done. And then you'll go to Andor, who's just, well, he's probably had the best different scenes out of anybody so far, but like they're repeating a lot of the same beats without doing anything different, and I don't know why we're repeating these scenes 20 times as opposed to seeing like the growth of like what's the next step here. And maybe that's intentional to make you like to make the audience go like, in the case of Syril, like he's going through Groundhog Day, his life is pointless, he has no meaning. But how many times do you need to show us the same scene to get the point across? Like in the
he loves his Star Wars Cocoa Puffs.
He loves his stoop and he slurps.
Oh, dude, that was the most annoying scene of any TV show I've ever watched. Is the way he slurps his milk. Oh, he's so hateable, dude. Stop slurping your milk, Syril. Have a little decorum. Have a little self-respect. Stop eating cereal. You're like a 30-year-old man. Eat bacon and eggs like everyone else, or whatever they eat on Coruscant. I don't know, but try something different, all right? Because what you're doing right now is childish.
And I get the point of that scene. Everybody was like mad at me. They're like, you don't understand what this scene is trying to say. I'm like, nope. I get exactly what this scene is trying to say. They're trying to say that his life is pointless and he is going in circles and he doesn't know what he's doing. I get it.
That was established 2 scenes ago.
You don't need to show us 3 times, 3 or 4. I don't know how many freaking cereal bowl scenes we've had. But if you go back and count, they've established it maybe 3 or 4 times. Yeah. And I'm like, you don't need this anymore. We get what he's going through. You don't need to bash it into our heads. Yeah. And I feel like they're doing the same thing with other characters like Mon Mothma or Vel, like sneaking around or whatever. Like, can we see some growth beyond this? Where are they going? Like, let's get to some conclusions here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one interesting thing that I think I wish this thread would have been gone down a little bit more is, and we haven't talked about this yet, episode 8, we get a major character, Saw Gerrera.
Oh, yeah.
Which I forgot his name. I don't know why I forgot his name. There's a million characters. My head when I'm watching the show, I'm trying to keep a like Bumpus Crinkle with like Syril, and then you have all these other people.
Grumpy Doodad.
Luthen, and then I just my brain short circuited and I couldn't recognize Saw. Or I didn't know. I remember Saw Gerrera's name, but really cool. Okay.
Dude, you know what happened when that scene came on?
What?
That scene came on, and like this is the first time I've seen a character in a Star Wars show where I was like, not like, oh, that's fun. Like we get to see that character. It's like the scene just like kind of happened. I was like, oh yeah, that's Saw. I felt like there was like I honestly thought that they were eventually going to do a build up to Saw, because Saw in a way, in a twisted way, because he's an extremist, is a representative of the rebellion and what these people are trying to do to fight back against the Empire. So I thought that when that character shows up in Andor, it was going to be this pivotal moment of, okay, things are now happening. But it was so unspecial and just so like, Okay,
No,
now
they just got in a
Luthen's-
fight, like a one couple old
Yeah.
men, and then Luthen just leaves, and you're like, oh,
Yeah,
okay.
like there was no build up to that. There was no we got
Yeah,
oh,
like,
okay,
well,
like
also-
we're going to this point, and now Luthen's meeting with Saw. So oh shit, things are really
Yeah.
starting to come together. It's like there was no build up to that. So when the character did appear, I was like,
Yeah, Luthen just
Okay.
leaves and goes and meets with them, and it's like this is such a good opportunity because, like, you're right, Saw is an extremist. But if you haven't watched the show, you wouldn't. If you haven't watched Star Wars before, you wouldn't know that. So have him explain. This is a perfect opportunity to explain why rebels are rebels. Talk about the tyranny of the Empire. What have they done to you? What have they done to your people? He's like, I'm not going to put my men in danger for this. X, Y, Z, blah, blah, blah. Okay,
Which, by
that's
the-
all well and good. I know who Saw Gerrera is. To everyone else, they're just like, oh, here's Saw Gerrera and Luthen meeting. Two characters I've never heard about before in Star Wars. And then it's just for one short scene in Episode 8, and then I don't see him again for the next
Dude, you know
episode.
what?
It's like, okay.
In Star Wars Rebels, they make a point in season 4 to show you how at odds Mon Mothma and Saw Gerrera are. So there's like this whole scene in season 4 of Rebels where Mon Mothma is confronting Saw, and they have like this big fight because she believes in one way of going about the rebellion, and he's obviously an extremist and he goes too far. But it was really interesting because you could tell those characters had a history. And there's such an interesting opportunity for conflict there, and they just didn't use it.
Yeah.
And you could have like given a great explanation for at least like how Saw is as a character, because obviously like for people like you and me, we know that the character runs all the way back to the Clone Wars with Ahsoka Tano, and you see his roots there, and then you see him in Bad Batch, and then you see him in Rogue One. So we have all that information, and they just had a really cool opportunity to show you how an extremist functions, like with the right ideas but going too far, versus somebody who is a senator, and paralleling those two ideas. But he just came in and it was so unspecial, and I couldn't help but feel like you missed such a great opportunity to tell an interesting story, especially if you're going Mon, Saw, Luthen, and maybe how these characters' ideas of how to go about the rebellion might clash with each other.
Yeah.
So I was like, nah, that was kind of a letdown. But
Well, I think it's also just like, I think the show in general, usually there's these Easter eggs, there's cameos and stuff, and it's fan service, right? I know some people don't think you should not overuse that, but some of it's not just an Easter egg. Some of it's just part of the Star Wars universe, so it's relevant to bring these things up, and it's relevant to bring these characters in. In Saw's case, it's relevant to bring him in, but it should also feel kind of fun. That's kind of why I like Star Wars. Like, even Book of Boba Fett, have your feelings about it as you will. It was a fun show. Like, I laughed a lot. Like, there was moments of it where I'm like, holy shit, I can't believe this is happening with like Luke and Ahsoka. We have the spin move, obviously. Cad Bane. And like, that show didn't blow me away, but it was a little bit more like fun to watch, because that's kind of what Star Wars is. It's like kitschy and fun and whatever. And like, maybe that's why you feel like the tone isn't working for you, and that's totally fine and valid. I'm not saying 100% I don't like this. I think it's an experiment in another direction to take Star Wars, which great. I'm all for trying new creative things, but maybe that's the reason why it's not like hitting for me 100%, is it just lacks a certain like fun element that other Star Wars content has. I don't know. I can't
totally
put my
agree with
finger on it 100%. And I'm still enjoying it. Like each episode that goes by, I'm starting to like the show more and more. And I don't want to, as with every show, I'm nervous to put like a final judgment on it until it's all done with, because I'd like to see where they're going with it. But like, as it stands right now, I'm kind of just like, oh, okay. Like, I don't feel the same way about this show as I did with Book of Boba Fett or Mandalorian, for example, or even other TV shows that I'm watching where like, I want to binge it. I'm like, I can't wait to watch the next episode. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And I think if you could boil it down to one word, I think it is the lack of fun. I don't think that Andor is a very fun show to watch. That's a huge part of the reason, like, why I like tuning into Star Wars anyway. I mean, like, yeah, people can make fun of the campiness of Han Solo tapping on a stormtrooper's shoulder and running away, but people like that. It's campy, it's fun, it's corny, you laugh. Like, it's a crucial element, I think, to the success of Star Wars. And right now I'm watching Andor and I feel so bogged down by it.
Yeah,
it's like, like in the quirky dialogue as well, like the oh, I've got a bad feeling about this, and it's Anakin Skywalker sitting in the cockpit of the spaceship, and Obi-Wan doesn't like flying. Like, that stuff adds to the experience of the show.
Well, also, no one's having a good time in the show. Everyone's miserable. Everybody. Like, all the characters are kind of the same tone. Like, everyone's just miserable and angry all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you need to have stupid jokes, like, which, although that is kind of part of Star Wars, unless you're doing the first lines from the the Last Jedi, which is one of the worst first scenes of anything ever, is when they make that stupid your mom joke.
So bad.
But, like, having just, like, lighten the mood a little bit, like, have some creative, well thought out, like, lines in there just to lighten the mood so that we're, like, it's not everything so somber all the time. maybe that's part of it too.
Well, because I keep going back to The Mandalorian because I think it really does a great job of balancing out these tones that we're talking about. The episode with Bill Burr.
Yeah.
The second one, not the first one with the bounty hunters, but the second one where he's going undercover with Mando to kind of break the kid out. And the whole thing is that, like, Mando's not wearing his helmet. And so you have, like, these kind of, like, funny moments of, like, Bill Burr's character, like, calling him, like, brown eyes.
Yeah.
And it's, like, this whole thing, and it, like, adds to the lightheartedness. But then you have a really tense scene of Bill Burr's character and Mando talking to that sleazy Imperial dude who's, like, troopers are expendable. And Bill Burr's character's so mad he shoots him.
Yeah.
Like, that's a perfect example of having two tones where it's still really, really fun, but you can have a very serious moment in there and you're like, oh, shit.
Yeah, I think that's also, like, I also have my criticisms with Bill Burr and Mando because he's not really acting, he's just being Bill Burr, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just like him, like, oh, dude, I can't believe this. Oh, it's brutal. Yeah. And you're like, oh, okay.
I like him in the second episode of Mando that he appeared in more than the first.
Yeah, I mean, he's still good. He adds something, but here's why he adds something. He's a character in and of himself. There's a big personality. Maybe that's another problem that I'm having too, is like with this show, everyone is just the same level of somber and sad. You don't have anyone that's like a real standout in terms of like, oh, there's such a likable personality. There's no like Han Solo in this. You know what I mean? And
except maybe Luthen.
Yeah,
maybe
but,
Luthen.
Like Luthen has kind of a jovial, fun attitude, but we're not getting enough of that. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we need someone, I think, with just like, there needs to be a character here who has like he's just a big personality where you're like, when they're on screen, you're like, yeah, I want to root for this guy. You know what I mean? Like, even when I see Cassian, I'm like, what? You're in jail. You don't really seem to care that you're in jail that much. You're kind of like frustrated, but you're like, why do you want to get out? What's your motivation for getting out? Because you're not so totally sold on the rebellion. You just want to get out because you don't want to be in jail, which isn't interesting to me. Of course, that's everyone else in the jail. Of course you don't want to be in jail. You know? Jail
sucks, bro, but like, what's your motivation for getting out? Because you're just rolling with the punches at this point. And I did want to ask you, what was the question you had for me? Because I interrupted you with the thought.
So, yeah, the question I had for you was, like, do you watch many other, like, sci-fi TV shows? Like, or have you in the past?
I watched...
I mean, like, Star Trek, obviously, but that's, like, older. Like
Firefly.
Yeah, but is there anything more recent? Like, I'm trying to think if there's any other shows we could, like, realistically compare Andor to.
In terms of tone?
Kind of. No. Just, like, sci-fi shows, because they're not super common, you know?
I don't think there are a lot of sci-fi shows that are serious in tone. I mean, it's the new Star Trek stuff, I don't know what the hell's going on with that. To me, it's a mess. Like, in terms of what they're doing.
You talking about the CBS, like, premium show?
Yeah, so like Star Trek Discovery
or whatever, Star Trek Picard.
It's so bad.
Have you watched the Picard one?
Picard is awful, dude. But Picard is like absurd. It's just like absurdity.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I haven't watched it, so I don't know. But I think that's also like what they're trying to do. I want to be fair here, because like doing a sci-fi show in general is hard. Very hard thing to do, especially with a beloved universe. But I'm not saying the show's bad. I want that to be perfectly clear here. I'm not saying the show's bad.
No, Matt, you're not allowed to have any opinions at all, because if you have any opinions, you're not a true Star Wars fan. You can't have any opinions. You can't even dislike the show.
Someone commented the other day, like, because I haven't seen every episode of Rebels, they're like, you're not a true Star Wars fan because you haven't seen Rebels. Oh, I'm not a true Star Wars fan because I haven't watched the cartoon that was on 10 years ago. Okay, dude, like, cool it. There are and then someone else said it because I haven't played Knights of the Old Republic. I'm like, that's a pretty niche game from a long time ago.
It's a gatekeeping mentality.
Yeah, it is.
Where it's like, if you haven't watched this, then you don't understand what true cinema is. And
Yeah.
I'm like, that's a generalization.
Yeah. I mean, overall, like for the show, and we're beating a dead horse here with our opinions on it. I'm not sitting here every week like, oh, another episode of this show. And I'm not walking away necessarily disappointed either. I'm just kind of like, okay, all right, it's entertaining. It's not blowing me off my feet by any stretch of the imagination. And it's not entirely like the funnest show I've watched.
The funnest.
But the most fun show I've watched. But like I am sitting here like, okay, it's more Star Wars content. And some of the things they're doing, I do think are groundbreaking with Star Wars.
Like?
The cinematography,
yes.
the production.
I will agree with that.
Amazing. The idea of focusing on some of these other things, I think, is there. I just don't think they're digging into them enough. Like a rebellion happening against a government, that's super interesting. But they're missing the point in these details in the with these characters that aren't like Syril and like the heist people.
I think it's a lack of focusing in. It's a lack of focusing in on one of them and making you really, really, really care, because you'll get, like, in terms of the heist crew, you got that vague story about the one guy who lost his wife to the Empire, or his girlfriend or whatever. And you're like, oh man, that's really sad. I'd like to see some of that. And then he's dead in the next episode.
Oh, he talks about his brother and his like farm. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. That guy, but then the other guy who lost his wife.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
So you know, like the guy who's like the commander in the Empire. Yeah, he's like, oh, my wife was shot down, or something like that. But they're not giving us, they're not digging it into it enough to the point where you really, really care about like this character, and you worry about them and their safety, and you're like, what's going to happen to them, and like the intrigue behind it.
Yeah, well, you're also not really rooting for the rebels that much right now, or the rebels. I mean, I don't even know how many there are. Like they had that random girl talking to Lena, whatever her name is. What's her name? Vel? Yeah. And then you have Luthen, and you have Mon, and then kind of Cassian, and there's other people that died. But like, how big is this? And why are they going against them? Like, I want to see more sentiment from the people. What is the world like right now? What is the galaxy at this moment like? What's the sentiment on Coruscant? It'd be interesting to have, like, even if you just had a quick cutscene of like you can hear people talking in the background about the Empire. Like, oh, I'm pro-Empire. Oh, well, I don't like what they're doing here, but you know, I don't mind this. And they kind of touched in that in one of the Mon Mothma party things.
How many parties does this woman have, by the way?
A lot. I mean, she's a politician, so
I mean, that's a lot of unsuccessful parties, because clearly nobody gives two shits about what she's saying.
Yeah. It's
just I feel like the show is beating a dead horse with how many repeat scenes that they have. Like, I feel like I've gotten to a point now with the show where it's like, I know what to expect. Syril eating his breakfast and being dissatisfied. Mon Mothma unsuccessfully talking to senators and then appearing in the Senate and nobody's listening. Vel going off to do some secret little mission to hack into some Empire thing. Yeah. Bix and Andor's mom are miserable on this planet. Like, I almost feel like I'm in a routine. Like, I'm in Groundhog Day with the show. And I'm like, I just don't feel like it's going anywhere. I do have to ask you, and I want you to be brutally honest with this. When you see people praising the show, so like there's a lot of praise for the show on Twitter, and no disrespect to people who are legitimately enjoying the show. You are allowed to enjoy it, just like we are allowed to criticize it. It doesn't change your status as a Star Wars fan. But my question for you is, do you feel like some of that, the praise of Andor's the best Star Wars since Empire Strikes Back, do you feel like these comments that keep coming out of, like, with overwhelming positivity, do you think they feel genuine, or do you think they feel very disingenuous?
Disingenuous?
Disingenuous. Like, how do you feel about that when you see it?
I think a lot of it's genuine.
Yeah.
I think some of it is, I'd say probably most of it's pretty genuine. I'd say there's a decent portion of it that is disingenuous. I've seen some articles that have been pretty fair on it that are like, hey, this is 3 stars. What's going on here? Blogs and stuff are being a little bit more critical of it. But like on Reddit and stuff, people are tending to be super positive about it. And if you're enjoying it, great. I think part of the reason is because it is so different. And expectations aren't that high for Star Wars. That's the thing, is it's been diluted in the last 10 years because of what Disney's done to it with the sequels and with Book of Boba Fett. And frankly, with their treatment of Obi-Wan. We're not, our expectations are pretty low. So in that regard, with them coming out of the gate being like, this might be a pretty bad show, if it's a slightly above that, you're going to be like, oh my God. And also it is interesting. Like the way they're doing it, one of the reasons I am enjoying the show is because it's darker in tone. There's different type of cinematography. They're writing the characters a little bit different. It's just something different and fresh for Star Wars, which is like one of the things I like about it. It's just it's the storyline content for me it's missing the mark a little bit. And again, I'm comparing this to other TV shows, not other Star Wars shows, comparing this to other excellent TV shows. It's not on the same level as some of the best of the best. I won't even put it in the top like 50 of like the best TV shows of the last 10 years. So that's
I'd be shocked if you did.
Yeah, well, that's where I'm coming from. If you compare it to other Star Wars shows, yeah, it's towards the top for sure, because it's just a little bit more realistic. They've put more time, I think, behind the way they do these things in terms of the Star Wars-y tone. It's missing the mark a little bit there, but I think a lot of people are being genuine with the way they like it, and I think people want to like it really, really bad. But I think the bar was also kind of low, especially coming off a show like Book of Boba Fett, which was just kind of all over the place. There was like a couple really good pieces here and there, but like as a Book of Boba Fett show, you're like, what was that? Was that really about Boba Fett? Or was that a bunch of other things? Same thing with Obi-Wan, like Obi-Wan's super high expectations. I thought they were going to just knock it out of the park. And it did have like two of the best episodes of Star Wars, or best pieces of Star Wars, like scenes ever, like my favorite stuff. But the show as a whole, you've said this many times, it felt kind of like cheap in some places. So coming off of that stuff, right, expectations are pretty low. So I think it's a bit above it. And I think maybe that's where some of the...
I think in contrast, that's why there's a lot of the positivity. Because a lot of it to me is not coming off super authentic. It just feels like, in contrast to Kenobi and Book of Boba Fett, wow, this is amazing. This is so good. This is the best Star Wars we've had in years. Oh my gosh, I can't believe we get to do this every week. And like, I don't feel that way. And again, no crap to anybody who loves it. But I also posted, dude, on my story yesterday, something on Syril and how he does like absolutely nothing in the show. Like, I don't know if you followed my story on that, but like I posted like a video of him sitting at the table eating his cereal to Here Come Those Tears Again by Jackson Browne. And the next one was the meme of the guy going, come on, do something. You would not believe, I had at least 6 or 7 people swipe up on my story and be like, giving me honest opinions. Now, I'm not going to call any of those people out right now, but like in the messages that I got, people were like, I don't understand why this is being as praised as heavily as it's being praised. And
I don't know that it is being praised that much.
On Twitter, yes, 100%. I've only watched a couple other reviews here on YouTube, and on Instagram, it's a bit more neutral. And I'm not on Reddit, so I can't speak to Reddit. But when I did get people swiping up on my story a day ago, 2 days ago, I was really interested to see the response there, because people were like, it's just really nice to know that I'm not alone in this. And so it has me like, I just don't know what it is. I feel like all the positive feedback on it, while some of it is genuine, I do believe it, and I'm happy for the people who like it. A lot of it just feels really forced to me. Yeah. And super inauthentic. Yeah. Like people are trying so hard to like this, because the last 2, if we're being frank, were a letdown. So
yeah, and I there's elements of the show that I do like, and I just wish they'd go into more. For example, the darkness of the Empire. I think they're doing a pretty good job with that, by the way. They're getting me there. I think at first I wasn't quite there with how they're portraying it. But like when they're torturing Bix, I'm like, okay, we're getting a little darker. It's kind of more Nazi-esque, you know, with like their costumes and like the way they treat each other in there. Like that's one of the most interesting things. The torture device that he used with like the screams of the dying children and stuff. I'm like, okay, let's focus on why they're so hateable, and like the hanging scene with Andor's dad and stuff like that. I think that's a pretty strong element of the show. I think the Empire itself is being represented pretty genuinely, I'd say. Would you agree or no?
Yeah, I would have to say that the most interesting scenes are with the Empire.
Yeah.
And as far as characters I'm interested in following, Luthen,
make Cassian. Oh, and Andy Serkis's character Kiro He's awesome. I'm excited to see. He'll probably die in the next episode.
Oh, he will absolutely die. He's not going to make it out of that.
Yeah.
If he does,
he's super cool though. His acting is just, it's so good. Like the end of that episode, I thought was just excellent. You can just slowly see his character change. And I thought the writing for him was excellent. I just want to see that with more characters, I think. That's like the big thing.
I want to see that level of writing applied to Luthen and applied to Andor.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing too. I don't think they're giving a lot for Diego Luna. And I really like Diego Luna. I think he is a good actor. I enjoy watching the guy, but I don't think they're giving him a lot to do.
Yeah, the show should be called like The Rebellion or something.
Yeah, it should
he's
not
really
be
the
called
star
Andor.
of his own show.
He's not the star of the show. It's about it's
if
almost,
he was, by the way, dude, they would have had more background on him. Talk about Kalani and like the planet he was on somewhere and his childhood and his
relationship with his father
and his mother. Like his mom's a really cool character. I think she's pretty interesting to me. They've thrown a couple nuggets in there that are interesting. Him with Bix. I guess they dated for a while. Talk about that more. You know, we just saw her get tortured. He has no clue that's even happening. I feel like if they could have tied that in more, maybe it gives him more motivation to hate the Empire. Stuff like that. And also, there's just side note, there was that weird scene with Bix where they just show her suffering for a second right before that really weird scene.
The slow motions of
it was just like, and it showed her for like 5 seconds and then went away. And I was like, oh, that was weird. Like, I don't know why that was there, but okay.
I thought for sure they would have, because I know that Cassian had that little confrontation with Bix and his mother, and they're like, no, we're not going with you, bye. But it would just be nice to see him care a little bit more, like, about his mom, like freaking out like a little bit about his mom and being like, you need to come with me. Like, I am scared for you. You are an old woman. You cannot fight. Yeah. And just maybe establishing that relationship more and then him somehow finding out that like the Empire captured his mom. Like, how much more compelling would it be if the Empire was interrogating Cassian's mother and they're beating her and they're doing all these terrible things to her, and Cassian like hears about it. He's going to go back. He gets captured by the Empire. He's in the prison. He's like, I have to get out of here. Like, they're going to kill my mom. They're going to find out about all this kind of stuff. And you give him a motivation to get out. But they haven't like established that relationship or the fact that like he even cares. Like, I still don't get like, why would he care about Bix? They don't even really seem to like each other that much. Like, they've had a couple scenes where it's like, we dated, but it didn't work out. And I was with Tim, and now Tim's dead. It's like, I don't believe that these two people are like genuinely interested in each other. Or have a reason to care about each other.
Yeah, there's just so many characters.
There's no, they don't do a good job of making you care. And I think that's why I don't really feel an urge to tune in every single week.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that it can't be done. I know I've said this the last few episodes, but I think Stranger Things does that really well. Stranger Things has like a million main characters. They have Hopper, Joyce, Will, Mike, Eleven, Lucas, Dustin, the Joe Keery, what the heck is this character? Steve, the other chick that Steve meets, Robin, Nancy. That's already 10 characters, dude.
Yeah.
and they're for the most part, I think that they're pretty well developed. And you have an understanding of each character's motivations.
Well, it's because they're interacting with each other in every like scene. They have their different groups. So they have the A plot, B plot, C plot with Stranger Things. And the characters, there's several characters in each A plot, B plot, C plot, and they're interacting with each other. So you can throw nuggets of character development into their dialogue with one another. Here, it's like very segmented. You have Luthen on his own. Mon Mothma's in her own world. You have Bix and what's his name's mom on that other planet. And then you have Andor in prison. And then you have the Empire stuff going on.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Like
they're not crossing over.
Different groups of stuff that aren't really, they're not intersecting. Oh, and then Syril. So it's all these things that are just like, it's a little hard to follow. So let's maybe go to some viewer comments. All very positive sentiments.
I think that's also why, just to play off for one more second, I think this is why like I loved Tales of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Is because Tales of the Jedi actually felt super refreshing to me. Like, arguably, I think, maybe not even arguably, I think Tales of the Jedi is the best Star Wars content we've gotten since Mando Season 2 ending.
Or
in terms of
Kenobi last episode.
I think in terms of writing quality.
I think Kenobi last episode, that scene between Kenobi and Vader is one of my favorite scenes in all of Star Wars, and it was like I would have, even though I didn't enjoy every minute of the entire season, I would go through all my emotions again just to experience that scene again for the first time. It felt incredibly Star Wars to me. It felt I got those Revenge of the Sith vibes, which is my favorite Star Wars movie, and it was very refreshing. I do agree with you that Tales of the Jedi did feel refreshing. It felt like, oh, we're back. Like, I felt like I was playing a new Star Wars video game for the first time or something. Like, yeah, same thing with Fallen Order, Jedi Fallen Order.
Yeah,
I wasn't expecting much from that game. I just bought it because I'm like, oh, it's Star Wars. I love Star Wars games. And I was blown away. In like my first hour of playing it, I was like, oh my God, this is so Star Wars. This is so awesome. Such good storytelling, you know? And you're building a whole new character. Yes, it's a Jedi, but what an interesting story they did there.
Yeah, you got Cal, you got Marin, you got Sayer.
Yeah.
You got the Inquisitor girl, who is awesome. Trilla is so great. Trilla is what Reva should have been.
Yep, I was just going to say that. Trilla is what Reva should have been.
Reva should have been Trilla, because Trilla is a great character. And then you got the alien guy that drives them around. I can't think of his name. But he's also good. Like, he's a great character. But again, limited cast, very well-developed characters. You understand who they are and how they're functioning in this environment. And I'm going to agree with you on Tales of the Jedi. It did feel like a we're back thing. It felt like George Lucas took over again, which is why I think Dave Filoni is so gosh darn good at what he does, because everything that he does feels like an extension of George Lucas. And I think that's why I enjoyed Tales of the Jedi so much. I felt like I was taken back to 2005 when I was rewatching The Phantom Menace a million times because of like the Jedi and Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, and then going into Revenge of the Sith and the relationship between Padme and Anakin and the Senate, and Anakin's going to the dark side. Like, I just felt all those feelings flooding back. And none of those feelings are in Andor.
Yeah.
That being said, we can get to questions. I did want to say that.
Yeah, I mean,
God,
I get it. We're not dealing with like as big a characters as Tales of the Jedi either, but
you can still capture that feeling.
The characters we're dealing with is the Rebels and the Empire. Those are the characters, quote unquote, that we're dealing with. You know what I mean? In terms of like recognizable Star Wars-y stuff. And I don't know that they're leaning into those elements enough. And I just like to see more stakes. We're getting there. I will say there's more and more stuff in every episode where I'm like, okay, we're getting closer and closer. We're just not quite there yet, in my opinion. I'm going to hold all judgment till the end. But yeah, let's get to some comments because we're running out of time here.
Questions, comments, traumas, dramas.
Everyone likes it. I mean, Hidden Scribbles, Ethan says, one of the many things that Andor is doing a good job with, in my opinion, is leaning on George Lucas's original inspiration from World War II. The Imperial and Nazi parallels are very strong in the series, and the Imperial prison felt hauntingly similar to concentration camps. I would say the parallels between Nazis and Imperials are good. The Empire dynamics is one of my favorite parts about the show, to be honest. So I would agree with that, and I think they do a good job of that parallel. I just want more. I want more of the Imperials. I need more of a standout head of the Imperials. Like
you need a head honcho.
What's that guy's name?
Thrawn?
No. Thrawn would be cool. Maybe we'll get him at some point. But like, who's the guy? That other guy who's like bossing around Dedra? No, the other guy.
The old guy with the great accent. I don't even know his name, dude.
I want more of him. He's cool. He's a badass. What does he do? So explore him. Like, I like that guy. So Ethan, yeah, I agree with you. I think they're doing a pretty good job there.
Yeah, the World War II influence is very prevalent. That's a good point.
Yeah. I enjoyed it. Nerd Rage 557 says, I enjoyed it. Andor continues to become more and more aware of just how evil and cunning the Empire is. The side stories add more layers of depth to the rebellion, and seeing Saw again was great. I find this show to be slow burning done right. All right. I mean, that's an interesting opinion. I do think...
I don't agree with that per se, but...
Well, I think Andor continues to become more and more aware of how... I'm not getting that. I don't know that he's really becoming that aware. If he is, it's a very slow... He's a slow learner.
It's an extremely slow burn.
I'd like to see more of that. Like, if that's what you're saying, I wish I saw more of that. And I think that is, like again, with the motivation piece of Andor, how do we see that some more? Like, why does he care about getting out of jail? What does he believe in? If he doesn't believe in the rebellion, what has he been doing the last 5 years of his life? I don't know.
Like, has he just been apparently looking for his sister, which we didn't cover at all since episode 3.
That'll come back randomly.
It will come back randomly, for sure. But, like, if that's his motivation, why hasn't it been carried through?
Yeah.
You know? Or maybe he'll get his sister back and then the Empire will, like, murder her in front of him. And
or
then
maybe it's
like,
Dedra the whole time. She dyed her hair. Maybe his sister's Snoke.
Maybe Rey's his daughter.
Yeah.
It's all coming together.
She's Obi-Wan. Saif, I hope I'm saying that right. Syed, sorry if I'm butchering your name. She said, yes, she enjoyed it. Poor Andor, he hardly spoke in the episode. Yep. I think, look, I'm enjoying these episodes, but I agree. Like, we need like the star of the show to be the star of the show. Like, talk more.
Or don't call it Andor. It's like calling Star Wars Rebels like Zeb.
Yeah.
And because Star Wars Rebels covers like the main crew, but it's vague enough to the point where you can hop around from character to character. And it's not going to be like, okay, if the show is called Kanan and Jarrus, why are they not focusing on Kanan and Jarrus?
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And that actually leads me to one of the other comments about episode 8. It's a good show from TGJ. Shows a very bleak dystopia. This isn't fantasy Star Wars, though. Too much exposition about a prison and prison shifts and prison meals and prison cultures. Don't necessarily disagree with that.
Is he criticizing the exposition of like how long the scenes are carried out?
Just like, the show. No, just like the tone of the show, which I don't necessarily disagree with. I love the tone of the show. I just don't know that the content and the characters are interesting enough for me yet. If we're going to do a live action show of this caliber, why don't we do more live action with like Rebels stuff? You know, and we might be getting that more with Ahsoka. I don't know. That could be something that we get, but yeah, it's definitely not fantasy Star Wars. It lacks that fun element. And I don't mind the bleak dystopia thing. I think that's kind of important to show with Star Wars, because that is an important piece of the puzzle that fuels all the other movies. Is why is the rebellion even happening in the first place? It's just like we don't have enough motivation behind these characters, and like show us more about it. Which I don't know.
Make us care.
Yeah, Brandon Deeks does not like it. He says, of course I watched it, still boring AF, but the story is actually good if you can stay awake. I don't think it's that boring. I don't think it's that boring.
I thought episode 6 and 7, I was like, let's go. Come on. Like, let's go. There are some moments that are yawn worthy. Like the 80 scenes of Syril eating his cereal. Like, you can cut some of these scenes out. Like, I don't know if they're doing a good job of trimming the fat. You know? Whereas Tales of the Jedi is super efficient with its time. And it goes, look, we're only going to use the amount of time that we need to tell the story. I'm not sure that that's this show's strong suit.
Yeah.
Is cutting down the fat. So I kind of agree with that. I kind of agree with that.
And I don't mind a slow burn. And maybe there's going to be a huge payoff at the end. And I'll eat my words. But in the moment, it's like, there's just a couple things missing. Episode 9.
Oh, those were all episode 8. Okay.
Yeah, Franco Pusari said it was insane. Best Disney Star Wars thing since Rogue One. The show I never wanted became the show that blew my mind the most.
Well,
cool.
First of all, congratulations. I'm glad you like it.
I do too. I do think, sorry to call you out, the best Disney Star Wars thing since Rogue One is an insane thing to say. Especially after Mando, season 1 and 2, like especially the ending of season 2 and like the last episode of Obi-Wan, like, and like the 8th episode of Book of Boba Fett was like awesome. Maybe as a whole, I don't know.
I don't know. Clone Wars season 7 was pretty banger. Those last 4 episodes.
Yeah, Clone Wars season 7 was really good too. So I don't know if I necessarily agree with you on that aspect, Franco. But the I'm glad you feel that way. The show you never knew you wanted, or the show you never wanted. So you've really come around. He's really come around to liking it.
Well, good. I'm happy for you.
Yeah.
Find stuff you enjoy and enjoy it.
Yeah. Damien Parra says something interesting. I have not seen the episode yet because I'm waiting for the rest of the episodes to come out because he wants to binge them, I guess. But I will say, since I've watched the other half of the series, I will say I'm loving it. I hope that season 2 will even be better. That might be a smart way to go about it. I think this might be an issue that maybe you and I are both having with the show, is it feels really slow because we're waiting week after week. And they released those 3 episodes where not really a ton happened. Like, there was a whole lot of nothing for 3 episodes. That could have been done in 1, probably. And it's probably more of like a binging type of show because you're like, okay, like with a show like this, the endings aren't that great. So I'm like, I don't want to wait for next week. Just show me what's happening. I don't like, I'm not invested in the ending of what this show is and then knowing what's going to happen next week. So like, maybe that's a smart move. I think that binging this show might be the way to go. Maybe I'll give it a second watch.
I don't know if this show is really bingeable material to play devil's advocate, because each episode is like an hour and they're taking their time. Whereas if you look at something like Clone Wars, that's about 22 to 30 minutes. And so it's a lot more consumable. And I would say that Clone Wars is a lot more efficient in terms of what it is trying to say. Like in season 7 with the Captain Rex episodes. And like leading into that story. I think that is way more bingeable if you want to go all at once, because that's half an hour and it's way more efficient to me personally, as opposed to Andor, which is like an hour each and it's taking its sweet time.
Yeah.
I would argue even Mando is more bingeable. And Mando's
definitely
like
bingeable.
40 minutes, 45, sometimes.
Yeah, 50. I wish we had longer episodes with those, and with Obi-Wan. That's one thing.
I think Obi-Wan needed to be longer because of the content they were trying to cover. Whereas with Mando, I think Mando only used the amount of time that it needed to tell the story. And I think like wanting more time from Mando is just wanting to see more Mando because it's Mando and who doesn't enjoy it? Yeah. But I think with this time it's like, come on guys, cut the fat.
Yeah, I agree. Some really positive stuff. Then we got to close it up here. Khalil says, yes, the show's incredible. Love every minute of it. Belkin Jr. says, this show is so much better than anything else Disney has put out for Star Wars. That's a bold statement.
That's pretty bold.
Phil Smith says, best Star Wars TV series by far. Mark Tolsom says, fantastic. Love it. And then Back to the Future Fan 88 says, he's going against the grain a little bit here and says, I personally haven't been enjoying the entire series so far. And this episode just adds to that, although Andy Serkis's acting has been a bit of a saving grace for these past few episodes. Also, that scene with Syril, it was the most secondhand embarrassment-inducing scene I've seen in a while. Some of the worst dialogue I've heard in Star Wars. Who wrote that scene? I thought it was good. Cyril's so boring. Can we just see him in different scenery?
Okay. Can we just talk about that scene for 1 second? Just devote 1 minute to that scene. From that scene, what I got is he is lusting after her job. It's not her, it's her position and his kind of like attraction to the Empire and power or whatever. Yeah. Now, I also get the impression that that dialogue was intended to be very, very cringy. That being said, it still came off very cringy in general, despite maybe the intentional cringiness of it.
Yeah, I think that was the whole point, though. That scene is
it was. Ooh. It was, for sure. But it was like the worst.
Yeah, also, the one thing we forgot to mention was Syril, too. He's such a big weirdo creep. What was his private box that he was talking about? He's like, not my private box, mother.
I don't know, but I meant to go back and I didn't tack that line. Dude, I don't know what that line
was. What's in his private box?
I don't know, but I'm not sure I want to know what's in the private box, man. I don't know if I want to know what's in the private box. That I don't know, but I do remember I saw you I saw you reacted to that line and I meant to go back and check it. I'm not entirely sure what the private box is, and I'm not really sure if I want to know.
Maybe we'll never know.
Maybe that's another unsolved mystery of the show. Look, I don't know. Cyril's pretty cringe.
If you're enjoying the show, I'm so happy for you. I'm so glad. I'm enjoying it too, by the way. I'm enjoying watching it. I'm just not like, oh my God, best Star Wars show ever. Because it's not. I'm sorry, it's not. Mandalorian Season 2 is leaps and bounds better than this. It's just better storytelling, more interesting characters. The production value of the show is unbelievable. Some of the score, I won't say all of it because it's been a little wonky, but some of it's really, really good. Like in the heist episode, I thought it was excellent. The cinematography, I think, is good. And I think the writing, like in terms of dialogue, has been good in terms of how the actors present it. Now, in terms of the meat of it, they're not including enough development for some of these characters, but the acting has been great. Some of the best acting of any Star Wars, I think. And I'd like to see more of that. So I'm going to hold all my further opinions until the end of the show.
Which is like 2 episodes away, 3 episodes away now?
3 episodes away. So we'll see how it goes.
All right, those are your thoughts. I mean, as far as it goes for me, I'm just kind of in the same boat where it's like I don't feel emotionally connected to any of these characters. I do agree with you. I do think that the cinematography of the show, the way it's shot, the production quality, the care that they put into the sets is extremely evident. And I think that alone is enough to make it go, yes, in contrast to past Star Wars shows, this is kind of kicking its ass.
Yeah.
In terms of the cinematic quality. And I think that if they weren't trying to put out so many shows at once, I would prefer fewer Star Wars shows with this attention to detail in terms of production quality.
Yeah, have us wait a while and be like,
I can wait 2 years for the next Star Wars project. I don't care. I have a life. I have things to do with my time. I'm not going to die if I don't see another Star Wars project for 2 years. I just would like whatever Star Wars project we get to be high quality. I will wait 5 years. If it takes 5 years for you to flesh out a good story with a good production quality, I'll wait for it.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I would have been willing to wait a lot longer for Kenobi if the payoff was a lot better in terms of production quality. But as far as Andor goes, I don't really feel a reason to tune in each week. I don't feel super connected to the characters. I'm not loving the tone. I don't really think it carries the spirit of Star Wars, especially in contrast to the Tales of the Jedi, which really felt like a Star Wars return to glory for me. And I'm perfectly okay with that. I just don't think it's I don't think it's the best Star Wars content we've ever had. But
yeah.
And I'd like to reiterate this. That doesn't mean that you or I, with our opinions of the show, that make us any less of Star Wars fans. Because I've seen some pretty intense reactions to how we feel about this show. And it's like, guys, if you like it, that's fantastic. And you are so entitled to that. But don't go around telling people that they are less of Star Wars fans or you just don't understand cinema if they don't enjoy the same things that you do.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't care. Criticize me all you want. I have my opinions on it. Whatever. Be mad at me. Sorry for telling the truth. You're probably mad at us because what I'm saying is a little bit true. And here's the last thing I'll say on it. This show, what I was hoping for it to be, would be I would be able to evangelize Star Wars to other people. This could be an an interesting story about, it's not too into the Jedi and all that stuff. It's about a rebellion versus a tyrannical government. That's a show anyone can get by. And it's in space too. It's not that. Okay, it is, but it's not. It's geared towards Star Wars fans who know all this stuff already. Those are the people who are enjoying it the most, and more power to you. I'm glad. I think one of the reasons I'm a little wonky on the show is if I had never watched Star Wars, I was uninitiated to it. This is not pulling me in. I probably won't even get past the first two or three episodes. That's just the truth, and that's probably what annoys me about it. Is it could have been something, and it could be something that would reel in new people and be a standalone show. You don't have to have it. Doesn't follow the Skywalker stuff at all. Great. So let's make it a really strong standalone show and start developing really good characters. And I'm not there yet. But I'm definitely going to continue tuning in. I think there will be some, the heist episode has been great. I think the prison breakout episode will be really interesting. I think it'll be another standout. Just give me more Luthen, please. Stellan Skarsgård.
Please,
awesome.
More Stellan Skarsgård. He's being so underutilized. And thoughts and prayers to Andy Serkis, because if he makes it out next week, good for him. But I am fully expecting him to die.
Yeah, he'll definitely die. But guys, if you've made it through this entire episode and we haven't annoyed you to death because you enjoyed the show so much, we appreciate you. Thanks for sticking with us. If you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing. We don't just only talk about Andor. We talk about other Star Wars shows too, so go binge those, go watch those. Click the subscribe button, click the notification bell. Also, you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at @star_wars_pod. Listen on Apple, Spotify. You can watch on Spotify, videos there. Anywhere else you get your podcast. Leave us a review on Apple if you enjoy this, or if you're just feeling passionate about it, leave your comments below, and we'll talk to you about it.
Yeah, we'll share
And
thoughts.
watch our reactions too. Some people don't like mine because I talk a lot. Sorry, I like talking in my reactions. Deal with it. That's how I watch regular TV. I'm annoying to watch TV with.
Can I do want to say for the audience, if you have made it this far, Matt and I had a lot to say on Syril eating his cereal, and I don't know if you caught this, Matt, but the homepage of Disney Plus is a picture of Syril eating his cereal.
I know.
And somebody pointed that out to me on my video, and I was like, there's no way that this is real. And I went on the page, and lo and behold,
it's real.
There he is.
It's real. All right, guys, we'll talk to you next week. We'll do episode 10. And then there's 2 episodes.
Episode 10. Thoughts and prayers to Andy Serkis.
Yep. And to us, so that we don't get too much hate for criticizing the show.
No, we're fine.
Yeah, but we'll see you guys next week on another Star Wars podcast. We'll
talk to you guys later.
Bye.